Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm a Ukrainian Canadian. Today's February 26th, 2023. And let's get to the news happening in Ukraine, shall we? First of all, I want to thank you all for being present during the live stream on February 24th. It was a good time. We discussed the one-year mark of the Ukrainian War of Independence from Russia, and I really appreciate all the comments and support and the questions that you had during the live stream. It was really fun, and hopefully we can make more of them in the future. For sure, I'm going to make more live streams with you guys. So I come with you with less good news from Bakhmut. Yet again, the situation is becoming very, very dangerous and critical for the Ukrainian forces. The Russians are successfully pushing and encircling the Ukrainian forces from the north. More specifically in Yahidne and Berkivka. As you can see here, the Russians have taken those two settlements and they now want to take Bogdanivka. So they really want to encircle the Ukrainians from the north here, and they want to cut off the last safe road that goes through Khrumovit here. And there's more reports yesterday evening that the Russians started a new attack trying to overtake the main highway here in Ivanivske, the T0504 highway. And now there is a presence of Wagner forces within Bakhmut on the east side. Looking at the map in more detail, you can see that there's already Russian forces here fighting on the east side. There's already a couple blocks that they control, and the Ukrainians are trying to do many counterattacks here to push them out again from the east side of the city. In the north, the situation is not good. Yahidne is under Russian control, and Berkivka, there's visual confirmation. And there's also, allegedly, the Ukrainian forces broke a dam here to flood this area to slow down the Russian push on the north. So it's not looking good, and I'm expecting within a week that the Ukrainians pull out. I can't see this being, a very defensible city now, especially since the Russians have pretty much encircled Bakhmut. And they're going to disregard whatever losses they're going to incur. They're going to disregard it. They see that they have the momentum here, and they're going to continue pushing. Bakhmut served its purpose. We've been talking about Bakhmut since summer of 2022. The Ukrainians defended it with everything they had, and it's time to pull out. It's time to save the lives of the heroes that have defended it for so many months to more defensible positions. As I've said multiple times, it's not worth it anymore. We can't turn it into another Debaltseve in 2015. So I think that's what's going to happen by the next week or two, is that the Ukrainian forces are going to pull out of Bakhmut. Unfortunately, and I wish I'm going to be wrong on this point, the Ukraine is going to mount a successful counterattack here, but as the days go by, I do not see that happening anymore. So that's the situation in Bakhmut. Apart from that, Kremina is relatively the same. The Russians tried to push out the Ukrainian forces towards Liman, but for now, there's not a lot of success here. Vuhledar is the other hot spot that we've been discussing the last few weeks, and the Russians have failed miserably here. They continue their attacks on a daily basis, but more and more reports start coming out that the 105th Naval Pacific Navy Fleet, the Marines, have been pretty much destroyed. Their combat effectiveness has been reduced to almost zero. They've lost so many vehicles, so many men, that they no longer have the combat effectiveness to push into Vuhledar. So all they do now is do artillery attacks on Vuhledar, and they hoped in late January that they would be able to drive out the Ukrainian forces from Vuhledar in order to push out the Ukrainians from south of Donetsk in this area, and also put in a lot of trouble the Ukrainian forces that are defending the lines here close to Donetsk city. But that isn't the case, and now the Russians have paid a very great cost here in terms of forces and vehicles. Now, the last thing I want to discuss is some reports today that allegedly there was an attack at the airport close to Minsk, and an A-50 aircraft, which is an early warning and control aircraft, that might have been damaged. And so we don't know yet what caused, this attack. What was the culprit of this attack? Was it a drone strike? Was it partisans within Belarus that planted a bomb? But there's a lot of reports that are confirming that this aircraft was there, and that was the Machulishchi airport. Let's look at the map in more detail where that is exactly. You're very close to Minsk, in the south of Minsk. You can see that it's this one right over here, Machulishchi. And so the A-50 was somewhere here on the runway, parked, and it was targeted, along with snowplows as well that were damaged. So that's good news, because this is a very, very expensive aircraft with, you know, some of the latest technology packed into it, which also serves as you know, command and control aircraft to detect, you know, enemy missiles, enemy aircraft. So it's a really huge loss for the Russian military. So that's that in terms of the military situation, the map situation in Ukraine. Now, Putin had a little short interview today, and it was very interesting what he discussed here. So I'm just going to read it out for you guys. So he said that if we go down this path, I think that the fate of a lot of people in Russia, and above all, of course, the Russian people, may change dramatically. Well, just dramatically. I don't even know if such an ethnos as the Russian people can be preserved as it is today. So he's talking about, you know, if Russia loses this war. So there will be some Muscovites or residents and so on. These plans were all in the plans. They were laid out on paper. We simply try not to talk about it when building relations for reasons of partnership, but it is all there. It is all written. It is all written on paper. And now, when their attempts to remake the world exclusively for themselves after the collapse of the Soviet Union led to this situation, of course, we're forced to respond to it, summed up the Russian president. So he's worried about the Russian Federation falling apart, thus why they're fighting this war. You know, again, it's the narrative that Putin chose to explain to the people of Russia why he started this war, right? It was an existential crisis for the Russian people, and thus they have no choice but to fight it. And, you know, pulling in the same way as the Great Patriotic War, where obviously at that point the Soviet Union's existence was threatened, and so he tries to, you know, push the same parallels with the Great Patriotic War as to why the Russians need to fight tooth and nail against NATO and the West. But everything he discusses here is the fault of his own regime. They never fostered collective identity within Russia in the past 30 years. All they fostered was corruption and oppression of the Russian people. So when you think once the Russian state is going to dissolve, and it's going to dissolve very quickly once it starts happening, you think the people in Siberia, the Buryats, the Tuvans are going to feel connected. They're so distant from all this culture that's been only present in the urban areas, such as St. Petersburg, Moscow, Yekaterinburg. All the urban centers perhaps are supportive of this ideology, but you know, the grand majority of the people in the rural areas don't care at all about what's going on. So it's going to really, really dissolve very quickly. And it's very possible that the Russia that we know as of today is not going to exist in its same shape and form in the future, in the next 10 years. So today as well, Zelensky came out and talked that he's convinced as well that Vladimir Putin will sooner or later be killed by his own inner circle, so his elites and his minions that surround him. And so he said that there will certainly be a moment when the fragility of Putin's regime is going to be felt in Russia, and these carnivores will eat the carnivore. It is very important, and they will need a reason to justify this. And so I totally agree with it. I think that there's no hope in the Russian population anymore to depose Putin, some sort of grand revolution. And it all comes down to the Russian elite. And so I think they're going to sense Putin's weakness, and it's going to be their last resort option. When everything is going to be lost within Russia, there's not going to be any hope. And that all lies into the successful Ukrainian counteroffensive, right? Once the Russian forces are routed, they no longer have the power to push within Ukraine. That's when I think the elites are going to use this option to prove that, look, we did something, we deposed Putin, it was all his fault, and they'll blame everything on Putin. And they're going to try avoid responsibility, right? They're going to say it's all Putin. We didn't even know that he commanded this invasion. We were kept in the dark, right? Sure, right, sure. Like Putin, ordered himself the preparation of thousands of men to go to the front lines, ordered the preparation of the shells, of the logistical supply lines, ordered the propaganda for 30 years within Russia. It was all collaborated within these elites, and they're going to have to pay the price as well and being punished. So we shouldn't be falling prey to their manipulation as well when they're going to say that we didn't know anything, we're not to blame here. And they're going to be it's going to be necessary to punish them the same way like the German collaborators, the fascists in World War II of the Hitler regime, the same way, right? It's not just by punishing 30 odd people that served under Hitler's fascist government that we managed to dismantle this ideology. It was by punishing every single people that worked under that government structure in World War II, and the same thing is going to happen in Russia, hopefully. Last but not least, this is again another Russian coup. Now they're talking about if they wanted to take Kiev in 3 days, they would have done it. But of course, right, the master strategists now talk about the fact that, it's all part of a bigger master plan, right? So let's see what this propaganda lady is talking about. So all of yesterday, well, they were marking their day of invincibility yesterday, talking about the Ukrainians. They had to call it something, right? They were saying that Ukraine's main achievement is that Kiev still hasn't been taken in 3 days. As was promised, as was predicted by the American General Mark Milley. But in Ukraine, everyone preferred to forget the fact that these were the words of an American general. So they were all saying that we plan to take Kiev in 3 days. Let me repeat myself. If we had wanted to do it, we would have done it. What's more, we all have the capacity and resources to have done it just like the Americans took Fallujah. That's some copium here. Why not? But our Supreme Commander-in-Chief doesn't want to. He doesn't need the Pyrrhic victory. And we don't either, because we'll be living there later. Well, now they're saying that, they felt bad for the Ukrainians, and so they decided not to take Kiev in 3 days. And I'm sure the 150,000 eliminated Russian soldiers were also part of this master Russian plan, right? That they wanted to fight this war for many years, right? Who wants to fight a war in 3 days? Let's fight it in 1 year. That's a better thing. It's ridiculous. It's the copium that they're feeding the Russian population right now. And in reality, the Russians just don't have any choice anymore, right? They don't have any choice. I'm talking about the elites, like these propagandists, the ministers, everybody surrounding Putin. They don't have a choice anymore. They have to go with this path. They went all in, and so they're going to live or die by that. So yet again, this proves that the Ukrainians need to defeat the Russian military in full. It's not going to be some sort of peace deal that, another Minsk III or the Chinese peace plan or whatever peace plan is proposed. It needs to be in the benefit of Ukraine regaining all of its territory. That's what a victory is for the Ukrainian people. That includes Crimea and the Donbass. Because if we reach some sort of agreement where there's going to be a peace proposal, where Russia gets to keep certain territories, you know that Russia in 10 years, maybe in a year, maybe in 20 years, they're going to do the same thing, and they're going to continue terrorizing and swallowing land slowly, just like they did in Georgia, just like they did in Moldova with Transnistria, and even within its own country, right? With Chechnya, just the world misses that because Russia does in very small bites, right? So we cannot allow Russia to do this anymore. And they need to be punished by completely destroying its army, right? Reducing it to nothing. And I'm saying just militarily speaking, right? They can no longer do the damage that they have done in Ukraine, right? It's to the detriment not only to Ukraine, but to the entire world. So let me know what you guys think. Thank you so much for supporting my channel. Please subscribe if you enjoy my content, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you.